Have you ever wondered why almost everything in the world is bought and sold in dollars? Oil, wheat, steel, medicine. It doesn't matter what country you're in or what currency you use. The dollar always shows up. That's not a coincidence. Today, Rich explains why. Welcome to RichStick. There is a date that changed the world economy forever. 1971. Before that year, every American dollar was backed by physical gold. Real. Tangible. If you had a dollar, you could, in theory, exchange it for its equivalent in gold. That gave the dollar concrete value and gave the world a solid reason to trust it. It was a system that worked. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. But in 1971, President Nixon announced something nobody expected. The United States would no longer back the dollar with gold. Overnight, the dollar became paper. Just paper. No gold behind it. No physical backing. Just the promise of a government. And that's where the biggest problem the United States had faced in decades emerged. If the dollar no longer has gold behind it, why would the rest of the world keep wanting it? Why would China, Africa, or Europe accept that paper in exchange for their products, their work, and their oil? What reason would anyone have to keep trusting a currency that no longer represents anything tangible? It was an enormous crisis of confidence, and the United States urgently needed a solution, a powerful reason for the entire world to keep needing dollars. They found it in the most strategic place on the planet at that moment: oil. In 1974, the United States reached an agreement with Saudi Arabia. Simple, silent, and devastatingly intelligent. Saudi Arabia would sell its oil exclusively in American dollars. No exceptions. No negotiations in other currencies. Only dollars. In return, the United States offered military protection, access to weapons, and a strategic alliance that guaranteed the stability of the kingdom. Both sides came out winning. Saudi Arabia got security and regional power. The United States got something far more valuable and lasting: the entire world needing dollars to access the most important resource in the modern economy. And here is the key. Rich wants you to understand. Oil is not a luxury. It's not optional. It's what moves the ships that transport the goods you consume. It's what powers the factories that manufacture everything you use. It's what heats homes, generates electricity, and keeps hospitals, airports, and entire cities running. Without oil, the world economy doesn't slow down. It stops completely. So if oil can only be purchased in dollars, the consequence is inevitable. Every country in the world needs to have dollars. China needs dollars. Brazil needs dollars. Germany needs dollars. India, Nigeria, Japan, Australia. It doesn't matter what their local currency is. It doesn't matter how strong or weak their economy is. If they want oil, they first need dollars. And that turned the American dollar into something no other currency in history had managed to become so completely. The world reserve currency. The currency every central bank on the planet holds as backing. The currency used for international trade. The currency that, whether you know it or not, touches your life every single day, no matter where you live. That is the petrodollar. It's not a complicated technical term. It's simply the name of the system by which the dollar maintains its global dominance through its link to oil. Now comes the part Rich considers the most important to understand. When a country tries to break that system, when it decides to sell its oil in a currency other than the dollar, something curious and almost predictable always happens. Iraq in the year 2000 announced it would begin selling its oil in euros instead of dollars. 2 years later, the United States invaded Iraq. Libya under Gaddafi proposed creating an African currency backed by gold to sell the continent's oil and break free from the dollar. Shortly after, Libya entered a conflict that destroyed Gaddafi's government. Iran has spent decades trying to operate outside the dollar system and accumulates economic sanctions that suffocate its economy year after year. Coincidence? Rich is not here to tell you what to think, but he is here to give you the context that the media rarely gives you when reporting on these conflicts. Today, something new is also happening. China and Russia are actively building payment systems alternative to the dollar. China is paying for oil in yuan with several countries. The BRICS, the bloc formed by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are seriously discussing creating a common currency for international trade. If that movement advances and the petrodollar weakens, the consequences for the world economy would be enormous. And that would affect you directly too. Let's talk about that now. About how all of this affects your daily life, because this is not ancient history or distant politics. It's happening right now, and it has concrete consequences for your wallet. When the price of oil rises, the effect doesn't stay at the gas station. It expands like a wave through the entire economy. The truck that brings food to the supermarket needs diesel. The factory that produces that food needs energy. The farmer who grew the ingredients needs fuel for their machines. Every link in that chain consumes oil. And when oil goes up, every link raises its price to compensate. At the end of that chain is you, at the supermarket checkout, paying more for the same things without anyone ever explaining why. When the Federal Reserve decides to raise interest rates, something happens that very few people connect to their daily lives. Investors from all over the world, from pension funds in Europe to banks in Asia, move their money to the United States because suddenly it's more profitable and safer to keep it there. That massive movement of capital seems distant and technical, but its consequences are brutally concrete. Money leaves emerging countries. Their currencies weaken. Their governments have to pay more interest on their debts. And that means less money available for hospitals, infrastructure, education, and basic services. Ordinary people in Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, or Nigeria end up paying the price of a decision made by a handful of people in a room in Washington. People they never elected, in a country they never lived in, making decisions that affect their salary, the price of their rent, and the cost of their entire lives. That is the true reach of the dollar's power. It's not just a currency. It's the mechanism by which a single economy can move the rest of the world without asking anyone's permission. Now comes Rich's favorite part. What you can actually do with all of this knowledge. If you live in the United States, you already have an enormous advantage that most people in the world don't have. Your savings are in dollars, the most powerful and stable currency on the planet. That means your money doesn't evaporate the way it does for someone in Argentina, Turkey, or Venezuela. But having dollars isn't enough if you leave them sitting in a checking account, earning almost nothing while inflation slowly eats them away. The first and simplest move for someone just starting out is to open a high-yield savings account. Most traditional American banks pay ridiculously low rates, but options like Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally Bank, or SoFi offer significantly better rates with no minimum balance and no fees. This isn't investing. It's simply making sure your money doesn't lose value sitting there doing nothing. The second move is learning to use the price of oil as an economic compass. When oil rises steadily over several weeks, it's a clear signal that inflation is on its way. That's the moment to pay down debt, adjust your spending, and avoid major financial commitments. Most people react when they already feel the hit in their wallet. You can get ahead of it. The third move, when you already have a small savings cushion and are ready to take the next step, is to consider assets that historically benefit when oil rises and the dollar moves. Energy stocks, commodity ETFs, or a small position in gold are accessible options for a beginner. Platforms like Fidelity, Charles Schwab, or apps like Robinhood let you start with very small amounts. The goal isn't to get rich overnight. It's to start making your money work in the same direction the system is already moving. Now, if you don't live in the United States, the situation is different, but the opportunities also exist. The first thing you need to understand is that your local currency competes against the dollar every single day and generally loses ground over time. That's not bad luck. It's the direct consequence of the petrodollar system. The most accessible way to protect yourself is to diversify part of your savings into dollars. Many banks outside the United States allow you to open dollar accounts. Digital platforms like Wise, Revolut, or Nubank in some countries also let you hold dollar balances simply and without major requirements. You don't need much to start. What matters is that a portion of what you save is not completely exposed to the devaluation of your local currency. The second thing is that when oil rises on the international market, countries that depend on importing oil suffer more. Their currencies weaken faster, and inflation hits harder. If you live in one of those countries, anticipating those cycles gives you time to protect your purchasing power before the impact arrives. The third thing is that if your country has access to international investment platforms, considering dollar-denominated ETFs or energy sector assets is a way to make your money move in the same direction as the global system instead of staying trapped in a local economy that often goes in the opposite direction. The petrodollar system has been moving the world silently for more than 50 years. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's documented history you can verify yourself. It's in American government archives, in economics books, and in the decisions made every day in global financial markets. Nobody teaches you this in school. Nobody explains it to you in the news. But today, Rich explained it to you. If this video opened your eyes, subscribe to RichStick, because this is just the beginning. There is much more the world is not telling you. See you in the next video.